p.m. announces measures to contain COVID-19. Grand Chief visits Provincial Assembly House. And Great Grand Chief Sir Michael Somare.
This is National EMTV News with Helen Seah.
Good evening and thanks for joining us for Monday's news. Yesterday, the body of the Grand Chief arrived in Wewak, where mourners from all over Papua New Guinea turned up in numbers to receive his body. Elderly folk remembered how Sir Michael, as a young man, led PNG to independence. Kids lined the streets to catch a glimpse of the casket. Charmaine Poriambep files this report from Wewak.
The Grand Chief arrived yesterday in Wewak on a RAAF C-27 aircraft to a grand welcome ceremony. The plane was given the honors of a washdown. The plane takes it to a halt as families and government dignitaries look on to welcome the Grand Chief home. The aircraft, however, had its door shut and waited for the Air Niugini's Q400 that had left Port Moresby after the C-27. The Q400 arrived 30 minutes later. The aircraft had caused much controversy earlier that morning when the casket of the Grand Chief was placed at the cargo vault. A move that did not go down well with Papua New Guineans, even those in Wewak, with Sana Somare stepping in to call on the organizers to switch planes.
Now, Mipla appeal because online blo Mipla lo sipik, ito ko please Sir Michael no can kalap lo cargo hold blo New Guinea. Online blo Mipla lo sipik, that includes the rest of the people of Papua New Guinea that have come in from all over the country, are all appealing if we can allow online blo Mipla lo Port Moresby to agree with us lo put him Sir Michael on top lo the Australian military aircraft.
A consensus was reached and the casket transferred to the C-27. On board a Q400 was Lady Veronica with Prime Minister James Marape and his wife. As soon as the Prime Minister arrived, the formalities commenced with the blessing of the casket. The Prime Minister then handed over the body to the province to Governor Alan Burke.
I would like now to represent the rest of the country. We hand over the body officially in person to the ECB provincial government. The Honourable Alan Burke. Responsibility has now been passed. Thank you, people of
Governor of the ECB, the Honourable Alan Burke. Thank you, now welcome. Now kiss him casket now. For the last time, General Salute.
A guard of honor by the PNGDF then followed. Paul Bearers proceeded with lifting the casket to the hearse, and the convoy commenced out of Boram between a huge crowd that lined the stretch of road from Boram to the stadium. Another huge crowd packed the stadium both inside and outside to witness the program. Charmaine Poriambep, National EMTV News, Wewak.
Prime Minister James Marape has announced that Cabinet will meet to endorse Sir Michael as the Great Grand Chief of Papua New Guinea. The Prime Minister said Sir Michael will be remembered as one of the founding fathers of the country. However, the title of Great Grand Chief will be for Sir Michael alone. He made this announcement yesterday in Wewak.
We would like formally declaring the cabinet of Papua country, the name title Papua country by Golo M. Naetaso, but Logan Marlaman here, Belkis is my name, and the Papua. And the last time of Parliament, we close to announce it was a member of my great Grand Chief, because title Grand Chief, I will go, but not fast to go. But we might need to amend the laws. And then I go back to Parliament when I made him all of this our system maybe, and then not confirm him by name. The great Grand Chief maybe of Papua New Guinea, and we have here but not months in the title, and then one month or so, and then the name as I said, the country seems the title. Great Chief maybe of Papua New Guinea. diplomat, politics or title, whatever in the future, country as part of the history outside the current country go independent. And serving me for 49 years until they resign in his own time.
It was an emotional time for all those present when the hearse was brought to the stadium. This was where the nation gathered in Wewak to welcome the Grand Chief home and bid him farewell for the last time. He's now home amongst his people, his request honoured. A great feeling of sadness weighed heavy over the Sir Michael Thomas Somare Stadium as the Grand Chief was brought in. The PNG colours on the casket reflected on the stands and around the stadium where the national and provincial colours flew dominantly, a feeling of pride. Yesterday it wasn't just the Sipiks who gathered in Wewak, it was the nation combined. There to welcome them was the Wewak MP Kevin Isifu. He thanked the national and provincial governments, including citizens around the country and abroad, for standing by the province in this time of grief. But the greatest appreciation was the honour made to the Grand Chief's request to be brought home.
Thank you so much for bringing Sir Michael Somare, late Sir Michael Somare, home to be finally accorded with the wish, with his wish, and also with the greatest civic people's satisfaction.
For the 49 years he spent in politics, he had the support from his East Sipik people until he retired in 2017. His dream to unite a diverse country and lead it to independence became a reality, and that legacy was shown when the country came to Wewak to bid him farewell. After serving the nation, the Grand Chief Sir Michael Somare is now amongst his people. Lucy Kopana, National EMTV News, Wewak. For 49 years, Grand Chief Sir Michael Somare served the people of East Sipik and the country. Today he was given the honour of visiting the House of Assembly for the last time.
The casket of the Grand Chief Sir Michael Somare was brought here this morning to the Provincial Assembly House to lie in state. The casket was escorted by pallbearers from the PNG Defence Force. It was received by the Speaker and members of the Assembly. A guard of honour was accorded to the Grand Chief Sir Michael Somare by the Papua New Guinea Defence Force before his casket was received by the Speaker and members of the Assembly. The pallbearers proceeded with the casket into the Provincial House of Assembly. For the last time, he lays inside the house he built for his people, the house he served for 49 years. Standing in silence, each member feels they owe him for the seat they now occupy, for the democratic processes that allowed people to choose them, simply for the freedom. The House of Assembly meeting commenced, chaired by the East Sipik Governor Alan Bird. Governor for West Sipik Tony Wowo was a part of the Assembly meeting.
Heavy ibungim papa, bibla masanap. Heavy no bungim, heavy bungim bibla la East Sipik, or West Sipik, bibla Sipik, East Sipik sago Johnny bibla. Lokarab heavy. The heavy bungim East Sipik. You must have some local want them together. So this like an person, both provinces, you must hold him, unite you together. Though so Quilla blame go, we will be there. And we will advise our daughters, our sons, our granddaughters and sons in the future that we will work together, no matter what.
Members of the House of Assembly were each given an opportunity to pay tribute to the Grand Chief.
Me Paulo you, na misalo timi you, na you go rest for peace. Thank you.
With the crowd building up at the stadium for the afternoon program, Governor Alan Bird closed the meeting with his closing remarks.
This assembly is proud true lo how you play walk, lo look save, lo pride blow bla, quila blow bla, sugundimi blow bla mi pundan. Mi play proud long. Register him look save go lo you blow young people, belong east na West Sipik. Especially lo wiwek, how you play walk, you play no ask him no money, you play bilas in place. Now you play look out him all flag, you play sanap him flag, blow all get a province. Now you play look out him stop, he go too light. Lo last 18 days, also governor blow you play bell blow me brook, me proud blow you play.
After 4 hours, the casket left the House of Assembly for the Sir Michael Somare Stadium, where a packed crowd waited for the casket. The Grand Chief Sir Michael Somare's casket was brought here to the Sir Michael Somare Stadium for the public to pay their last respect and for the night program to commence. Shamin Poreambeb, National EMTV News, Wiwek.
More groups have visited the Somare family house cry to pay their last respects and give their contributions. The Mapriks, the Morabians and the Manus people were amongst some of those who visited yesterday.
A grieving Sir Peter Luce visited the Somare family house cry yesterday. As a mourning brother, he rubbed his body with mud to pay his respects during the Maprik community's visit.
And now you kitchen body now. Thank you through the name Lord Pigini, then Brother Veronica. So you come to our sense. Thank you now. That's all you talk from me. Thank you.
Soon after, the Morabians made their visit, led by the Governor Ginsen Saonu. Amongst them were some of Morabe's senior members. In an emotional exchange, they presented their gifts and contributions both here and at the provincial house cry.
Somare go entrega friend na school na friendship me creating me plan mas come na sharing one time lamb me look here.
Also the big plan talk thank you through the name family. No that's the big plan boom. Na that's the relationship the Somare is one day go in up and funa.
In a true Papua New Guinean manner, groups have been visiting both the family and provincial house cry, loaded with gifts and contributions for the Somare family. The scale of this house cry in the country is unprecedented, both on the national and provincial level, not to mention the thousands of smaller house cries that citizens have set up across the country to honor the Grand Chief. It shows the impact he had and the relationships he was able to build as a leader of the people. Lucy Kopana, National EMTV News, Wiwek.
You're watching National EMTV News. We'll be back with more stories after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Earlier this afternoon, the program in Wiwek East Sipi continued at the Sir Michael Somare Stadium to farewell the Grand Chief. One of the ceremonies that took place was the Tumbuan ritual in honor of the father of the nation. We take a look at that again.
People blowing East na West Sipi na Olani Bung Tete. Tarayu blow to Palangat. Oli come up. Dr. Jacob Simet. We've been director of Cultural Commission. Now I walk close to one of the Grand Chief, long Sanapi history, culture. Now come up long Michael Thomas Somare, long this place where only Sanapi mem. Now behind this la power I come long country now, fight long self-government independence. Missing out in Dr. Jacob Simet. Long come forward. Boina Tuna Piram, Ravian.
Ponaravian, Master of Ceremony, Valentine Kambori, Ponaravian, Governor Alan Bird, all members of Parliament, the ministers, provincial members of Parliament, Isalavinun, when something you pla lukim, emipla Lorbaul, particularly Lomatupit Island, the one time sampla line, Lunara Plaside, Long Tavana, Mipla kam behind him, the Salaman, you miss out call him, the Grand Chief, Sir Michael Thomas Somare, mi plasa call him Lom Topalangat Somare. When him something, you may look him now, mi pla walk him penis, mi pla honor him, one pla lo mi pla, keselaman mi plasa call him Topalangat, lo membership belonging inside lo Tubuan society. Time all carry mem, first time all admit him, he go inside lo Tubuan, time him lik boy. Behind longen all been admit him ken, lo side blo mi pla, lo matupit. Lo makim one plaman, o sem big plaman, o sem Topalangat, deselakay nyo misay wakim. This is part of the ritual process which starts now, today. Hopefully, the organizers in ECIPIC and the family will allow us to complete the rest of the process, perhaps tomorrow, if not, maybe later on. The rest of the process we will complete back at home in a couple of weeks, according to timing. Just a little bit, apart from his involvement in the Tubuan on the Gazelle, of course, we know that the chief was born in Rabaul, most particularly at Rapindik, where we come from, and one of these Tubuan comes from, where he was initiated into. Behind, come up, big plaliklik, and we move, we go to Kokopo. A couple of days ago, some line of asking me, lo talk, lo life, now story belongs to Topalangat, because they knew they had a little bit, I had a bit of an association with him. A question which they asked me, and this is people in Rabaul, was, why was this man born in East New Britain? How na mama belongen karimem belong narapla place, ino place belongen? I was a little bit confused about this question. They were trying, I thought, for me to answer in some kind of outer world way. Those all meeting ting longen. 2 days later, all he asked me to talk. Now talk, he come up lo ting blomi. The birth of Sir Michael was, I would call, providence. I say providence because of what he did later on. Biaya na kama big plaman, ay mi tok logo, wakabat lo yung migolo independence. Mi pla lo Rabaul, lo Gazelle, you play some play sabe, mi pala got big problem. Mi play got big problem politically. Mi play some play tok lo independence, some play no got, only like him by you mi CC, you mi only mi go lo narpla for 40, 50 years. Narpla line, only call him lower better. They didn't want to have a bar of anything that was dished out anymore by the Australian colonial government. There were some of us who wanted to delay. The Battalion Association, which was probably the biggest group, which was militant enough to push its weight around, was the one that did not want to listen to any reason from anybody. Now, mi play stop all Sam for some 7 to 8 years. Mi play no talk lo mi play yet. Mi play wak lo ting usad man by kam. Na straight him sindan blo mi play. It got so bad, we had to bring in people from outside into the administration of East New Britain, despite the fact that many Tolais had filled key positions in the public service. One day, I understand that Sir Michael stood up and said, the problems of the Gazelle Peninsula of the Tolais cannot be solved by anybody from outside. He put his foot down and said, Sir Rabi Namaliu has to be sent to Rabaul to sort out those problems. Following this, Sir Michael took another step to further cement the relationship between the three groups and said, we are going to look at what you can offer in terms of our move towards self-government and eventual independence. Some of you will know about the attempts we made on the Gazelle to develop what was known as some form of home governance. Later, there was a court system, which was introduced on the Gazelle, which was called the Workray Nigunan. In the formative years of self-governance and independence, Sir Michael came to the Gazelle, and in some way, he accepted the two forms, the two systems, the system of governance and the court system. And we believe they were looked at seriously for adoption into the national constitution. Amlik tok tok belum mipla, o sa mipla wakabat belum mipla now today, mipla bainim participation na involvement belong topalangat Somare na melo mipla ol tolai, because one pla big man belum mipla ol tolai, and we go inside lo tumbuan, and we come up bid na tumbuan na melo mipla. Now it would not have been right for us to have his body interned without the necessary and appropriate rites being performed over him. Secondly, we have also come because of what he did for us. We believe we would not have done without his involvement, his directives, and his wisdom. Tasol, lik tok tok blomi, lo bigman blomi pla, bipla so kolim, topalangat Somare, bipla kam lo honorim, dai pelongen, nabiyain, payumi putim, igodan lo matmat. Thank you for listening. Na ponorabian. Victor.
And now we cross over to Scott White, who's in Wewak, and will give us the latest updates on the ground. Scott.
Thank you, Helen. It's been a spectacular day of color and celebration and a lot of sorrow. Less chaotic than yesterday when there were so many people on the streets. The stadium was packed to capacity. Today it's a bit more orderly. The public has come in. They've lined up at the edge of the stadium. Lots of guests. There was a delegation that came from Manus. They did a spectacular dance of appreciation and honor to the Grand Chief. The Tumbuan Society in Rabaul came also. They performed their rites. I didn't count the tuk-tuks that were here, but they performed an important ritual that was very significant for the Grand Chief, who was born in Rabaul and grew up there. The Grand Chief will lie in state tonight, and the celebrations, the cultural celebrations, will continue. The governor for Western Province has just finished speaking. Before him was the governor for Morobe, and they all, as was rightfully so, they paid tribute to the Grand Chief for his achievements, and the Morobe governor especially paid tribute to his contributions to the country. Back to you, Helen.
Thank you, Scott. That was Scott Wade coming to us live from Wewak. You're watching National EMTV News. We'll be back with more stories after the break. Welcome back to the news. Prime Minister James Marape announced this afternoon that as a response to PNG being in the red stages of COVID-19, the country will go into a nationwide isolation. He said while full details would be given on Wednesday after the burial of the Grand Chief, Marape stated restriction of movement from the city to another will be put in place during the school holiday.
All right.
Prime Minister James Marape stating this will allow the country to take stock on COVID-19 cases. In the last 24 hours, there have been 97 confirmed cases, 26 deaths, and 2,226 confirmed COVID-19 cases nationwide.
Not a stiff lockdown, but a nationwide isolation strategy to ensure that people are not moving around unnecessarily. Remain in your provinces, remain in your districts, remain in your villages, remain in a suburb where you are, and for us at the national level, linking with our provincial coordinating centers, with the provincial health authorities, and for us to establish a strategy that will mean we have isolation, identify.
Mr. Marape directing the National Command Center to consult with the Education Department and have the nationwide isolation plans in place in the next 2 days.
To our National Control Center what they need to do, including consulting the Education Department on when is school holiday.
Marape stating provincial centres had a year to set up for COVID-19 and the isolation period should run smoothly in unison with the National Command Centre.
The provinces, for them to have their provincial and district response set up, hopefully later on today and tomorrow when our team make contact, we'll activate those responses that should be taking place at our province and districts, and for us to work in unison and to ensuring that COVID-19 is identified, cases are identified, cases are isolated, and we, through non-clinical measures, try to stop it from spreading.
While nationwide isolation may seem like a change of words from lockdown, the Prime Minister reassures the plan should allow business activities to continue.
Strategy is concerned to stop people moving around without stopping business, without stopping government, just stopping unnecessary moving around, living in a COVID-sensitive lifestyle.
By Wednesday, full details of the nationwide isolation is expected to be announced. Adelaide Sirks Kari, National EMTV News.
All testing facilities in NCD are now seeing an increase in people wanting to get tested. Rita Flynn as well as Tarama Aquatic Centre are experiencing long queues for testing. This comes after a number of government department staff and private businesses closed operation in NCD due to staff testing positive to COVID-19.
The Public Solicitor's Office, Manasupe House and the National Courthouse at Waigani closing for 4 to 14 days to allow their staff to monitor COVID-19 symptoms after someone within their departments tests positive for COVID-19. The ratio of a person passing on the COVID-19 virus, the Prime Minister says, stands at 1 person to 3 people, causing a high rate of infection around the city.
Infection is to 1 case is to 3 infection. Then you could work on it, the number, and for us in the simulation that we've done, the number is quite staggering. And if we don't do proactive response to this, our health system will be clogged and we might not be able to.
Number of cars are now lined up outside Tarama Aquatic Centre for St. John's drive-through testing. St. John is testing for free and charging those who wish to get results after 24 hours.
24 turnaround testing results are done at Pacific International Hospital but come with a fee of 800 kina plus. While free testing is available, positive cases are given priority while negative cases take up to 14 to 20 days before you receive results. The same is also at St. John's drive-through at Tarama Aquatic Centre.
Results are taking time to process. We're not prioritising negative results at this moment. The priority is alerting people if the result is positive. We can't guarantee a turnaround time for a negative result to be given back to you.
COVID-19 testing is also taking place at Rita Flynn as COVID-19 case surge in the last 2 weeks. An increase in the number of people queuing for testing compared to the last 2 weeks. Residents of Port Moresby are encouraged to visit the testing facilities as this will assist authorities in mapping out how wide COVID-19 is within communities. Esther Thailam, National EMTV News.
From Friday 26th March, all passengers travelling from Port Moresby to Singapore, Hong Kong and Manila will be required to provide evidence of a negative COVID polymerase chain reaction or PCR test at time of check-in. This is already a requirement for all flights to Australia. Passengers who do not produce evidence of a negative test will not be able to board their flight. The PCR test must be conducted within 3 days of the scheduled flight departure. These PCR tests can be completed in Port Moresby for a fee with results provided quickly. Other types of tests such as the rapid or Gene X test are not acceptable. Air Niugini will continue to operate the 6 flights per week to Brisbane, 4 flights per week to Singapore and twice weekly to Manila. From 28th March, flights to Hong Kong and Cairns will each increase to twice weekly, while once weekly direct flight to Sydney will resume on Monday. Regular flights to other international destinations such as Honiara, Port Vila and Nandi remain suspended due to international border restrictions. Morabe's Education Program Advisor Keith Tangui says his office will not tolerate any teachers who do not meet the standard qualifications for teachers. Mr. Tangui said teachers who submit their resumption of duty forms without relevant documents will not be allowed to teach. He said those who are already teaching without meeting certain requirements will be removed from the classrooms.
Morabe's Education Program Advisor Keith Tangui this morning was busy screening teachers' resumption duty forms when we entered his office. This process is to make sure teachers meet all the requirements before being approved to teach. Mr. Tangui gave a brief on the screening process of teachers' roles.
And then it comes up to me and we recheck to make sure that everyone has got the qualification. They are the right people. They graduated with GPA 2.4. They got a teaching certificate. They got a diploma. They got a professional registration. And then they fill in all this.
Today, Mr. Tangui cancelled 2 names of teachers who did not meet certain requirements, one of which did not have a provisional registration certificate as well as a grade 10 certificate.
So I just cancelled their names, cancelled the name, and then cancel the information sheet and everything so that they won't get paid. All right, they won't get paid because they illegally filled in the form and they're illegally in the schools.
The screening process is the responsibility of head teachers, according to Mr. Tangui. This is especially for the case of new graduates and teachers coming in from other provinces. Meanwhile, Mr. Tangui said teachers' documents must be properly checked before reaching his office. Charlene Airy, National EMTV News, Ley.
The Morbe Governor Ginson Saunu has issued directives for a public holiday in the province tomorrow and an extension to the liquor ban. These directives are in respect of Sir Michael Somare's burial, which will take place in Wewak tomorrow. The liquor ban will be extended by 1 week commencing today. This ban will be in line with the liquor ban under the COVID-19 Pandemic Act. You're watching National EMTV News. Up next, we'll take a look at some sporting updates in Chukai Sports.
Chukai Sports.
Welcome to Chukai Sports. PNG sporting icon and Commonwealth Games gold medalist Ryan Pini recently came to the EMTV studios to pay his condolences on the passing of Grand Chief Sir Michael Somare. Pini also reflected on his experiences meeting the Grand Chief on several occasions.
PNG swimming representative and Commonwealth Games gold medalist Ryan Pini recently appeared on MTV's Sports Scene program to pay tribute to the late Grand Chief Sir Michael Somare. Pini, who had represented the country in swimming at the Olympic, Commonwealth and Pacific Games, reflected on his meetings and memories of the Grand Chief over the course of his illustrious swimming career.
I was over in the CPIC and there was a CPIC Ironman competition happening, and
yes.
I was over there and really I was having a swim in the ocean by the hotel, and I walk out of the water and there's the Chief, Sir Michael, sitting on the beach, just there, very casual for a man of his stature and who he is and the history who he represents. Is just sitting there, just admiring the view, and I went over and introduced myself to him, and by that stage, I wasn't a Commonwealth Games gold medalist, but I'd represented Papua New Guinea at Pacific Games and a previous edition of the Commonwealth Games. So I didn't know if he would know me or not, but I introduced myself to him, and we had a brief little talk there. So that for me is my first memory of him, of myself meeting him properly.
Grand Chief was a great advocate of sports, being used as a uniting factor in the country of 1,000 tribes. This was something that Pini was always aware of and was a proud ambassador for the country wherever he went.
From a sports angle, I was always there. I mean, the Commonwealth Games, for example, I was there to be the best I could be.
Yes.
But there's also this other big aspect of it where you're there to represent the country.
Yeah, exactly.
And that time for me, when you're there and you're listening to the national anthem, you're raising the flag, which is what Sir Michael Somare did on Independence.
On Independence Hill,
and that's replicating that instance. So raising that flag and that all just happening, it all does bring in that unity, and that's what sports is for me as well. It unites people, and that's how I feel that represents me. Just that raising of the flag replicates what independence was, and Sir Michael was a big part.
For his service to sports, Pini received the Member of the Order of the British Empire Award in 2005. The occasion was more significant for Pini because the Grand Chief was at hand to award him.
I was given the MBE by the Grand Chief. So I've got this photo of him and my dad, which is very special. But what makes it even more special is that my grandfather was awarded an MBE for the services to sport in Papua New Guinea. And he has the same photo with Sir Michael there. And so that's this another incredible sort of link, and just extremely honoured to have Sir Michael there to give me that award at that time.
Huxley Lovai, Chukai Sports.
The national EMTV News continues with more sporting updates after these messages. Stay with us.
Chukai Sports.
Welcome back to Chukai Sports. The Intrust Super Cup season was launched this week with SPPNG Hunters chairman Stan Joyce and board member Jeremy Edwards representing the team at the launch. The competition will kick off on Saturday, 28th March, with the Hunters to see the winner Manly Seagulls in their season opener.
The Queensland Rugby League competition was launched last week with the Queensland Intrust Super Cup season set for round 1 on Saturday the 20th of March. The SPPNG Hunters were represented at the launch by Chairman of the Hunters Stan Joyce and board member Jeremy Edwards, who is also the General Manager of the Southern Hemisphere in the Rugby League International Federation. Edwards said the team being based in the Gold Coast is a great opportunity for them to experience a new level of training at their Runaway High Performance facility.
I think what we've been able to achieve having the Hunters down here and that sort of stuff, and I think, it's great to get them that, extended visibility, also to expose them to, such a great facility down there at Runaway Bay and all the extra, add-ons that the team's getting and that sort of stuff. And I think that's a real inspiration for the young players, both the boys and girls and the men and women back home in Papua New Guinea, to see that what they can do if they want to achieve that sort of that programs.
Chairman of the Hunters Stan Joyce said, although it is seen as a risk by some moving the team to Australia, the players are committed to the people's expectation of the team, and although away from PNG there is ample support for the team in Brisbane, with Papua New Guineans living in Brisbane willing to show up and support the team.
You've got a credible team that's been able to be assembled. They asked me to be the chairman and I said, well, what's going to happen? And they said, well, we're going to get 30 young fellas and we'll put them on the coast and nothing can go wrong. And I thought, yeah, okay, let's go for it. But, this is risk-taking, but these are a bunch of people who love the game and love being there. And on top of that, in Brisbane, there's many thousands of Papua New Guineans who live there who actually are quite happy to come out to these games every weekend and pay the money. So that actually helps us to be probably one of the better supported teams throughout the competition.
Stan said that the Hunters' participation in the competition is a pathway to the National Rugby League. A fine example of this is Justin Olem, who plays for the Melbourne Storm.
Well, he's a classic case of a kid that's made good in the NRL, and he's just a hero back home to everybody of what he's been able to do. And I hope that the Hunters participating in the Queensland Cup is a pathway for more players to be able to excel to that level of excellence.
Fidelis Sukina, Chukai Sports.
And that story ends Chukai Sports. There were the details after the break.
Chukai Sports. Chukai Sports.
This weather update is proudly brought to you by MoniPlus, with you always.
I'll look at the weather forecast for tonight and tomorrow in the southern region. Cloudy with chances of showers and possible thunderstorms in Port Moresby. Mostly fine, though partly cloudy with evening shower or two in Daru. In the Mamasa region, partly cloudy with morning drizzles in Lae and thundery showers at times in Wewak. In the New Guinea Islands region, a few showers with possible thunderstorms, then cloudy weather in Lorengau. Mostly fine, though partly cloudy with possible late showers in Buka. And in the Highlands region, cloudy with rain showers and drizzles at times in Goroka and Kundiawa, and cloudy with occasional rain drizzles in Mendi and Wabeg.
Weather update was proudly brought to you by MoniPlus, with you always.
And that's been the news, sport and weather for today, Monday, the 15th of March, 2021. From all of us here at EMTV, pleasant viewing. Thank you for your company and bye for now.